Welcome back to my channel. This is Coach DC from All 22 Films, and today I've got a video to talk about the Seattle Seahawks trips coverages that they use specifically late in the 2025 season, and really going to focus on and try to hone in on the nuance and versatility that Nick Emmanwori brings to that equation. Because of the geometry of a football field, the width that there is, even at the NFL level with the hashes being so tight, you're going to see significant instances of 3-by-1 formations. In each case in this video, I'm going to show the formation and then talk about how Seattle tries to cover the width of the field as well as the verticality. Most of the time, Mike McDonald and Aiden Durde want to present a too-high safety structure pre-snap and then give the quarterback and the offensive receivers or tight ends different looks post-snap. I'm going to focus this in on the NFC Championship game win over the Rams, the Week 16, the thrilling overtime win as well, and then the Super Bowl victory over the New England Patriots. So this first one that we've got here, too-high safety structure. It's on a 2nd and 7. You're going to see a lot of second downs here in the first 6 or 8 plays of this video. And Seattle's going to insert the safety. It's the bottom side safety. Kobe Bryant, he's going to insert drop down in a cover 1 or man-free look. It's a 4-man rush. DeMarcus Lawrence kind of gets in the lane of the quarterback or has an opportunity. I think the left guard's going to step down and push him off path. But in any case, Nick Emmanwori is set up outside. He's playing basically outside corner. He's up at the top of your screen, the 12 o'clock position. So he's guarding one of the tight ends. It's one of the many instances of 12 or 13 personnel that the Rams used in 2025. We're talking about these two tight ends here, one of which is set up to the outside as a pseudo wide receiver. So because of Emmanwori, what they can do is they can slide one of the corners, one of the outside corners, inside over an actual receiver. So what Seattle has done here is make it look like man pre-snap with Job and Witherspoon set up over Nakua and Devontae Adams, and then Drake Thomas and Nick Emmanwori set up as if they're going to play man on the two tight ends, and that's actually what occurs here. It's why I call it man-free. Stafford just really confirms the middle of the field coverage really quickly, and then wants to get the ball up top to Nakua, who wins against Devin Witherspoon. It's just an example, if you ask me, of the play strength that Nakua has, but especially down the field. A lot of people think of play strength with receivers and corners, in the release, the first 3, 4, 5 yards or whatever. This is downfield, just a little hedge. Almost kind of reminds me of a shooting guard or a guard forward in the NBA who's trying to run off some screens, kind of hedging to one side, making it look like maybe he's going to bring this route back to the sideline. Instead, bends it back upfield vertically. And I think this is just an example of Stafford seeing that it's man-free, and then deciding to give his guy a chance to make a play. And in this case, Nakua wins against, one of the best corners in the league, obviously, in Devin Witherspoon. 2 legit passing threats on the field, Adams and Nakua, and Stafford takes the correct one-on-one. The other option here being Adams over the middle, kind of closed off by Job being in tight coverage here, and then Bryant stepping down to get in that window. Stafford goes up top and gets a big play. We'll have a similar dynamic here, and in fact, the same coverage, man-free, cover 1. The only difference is which safety is going to rotate. But from a Stafford or Rams perspective, he's going to throw it deep right to the bottom side of our screen to Devontae Adams against Josh Jobe. This same drive, in fact, too high look pre-snap. You got Emmanwori set up as the nickel. Nakua is off the field, so there's really only one legit receiving threat from a matchup perspective. If you're going to play man. So the safety is going to insert down to the trip side this time. And once again, it's going to be Bryant. He's going to take over this route by the tight end. Emmanwori locks up this backup receiver for the Rams. And then the outside corner up top is also going to take away the tight end's route, the outside route by the number 1. Stafford knows where he's going with the ball. Think like a string or a rope. And I'm talking about where Stafford is looking right now, and then these two safeties being connected. If one safety drops down, this top side safety, the field side safety, then the other side safety is oftentimes going to move to the middle of the field to play man-free, to be that high hole player. And Stafford knows exactly where he's going to go with the football, to Adams down to the bottom side. These are 2 second downs. in the NFC Championship game. Of course, the third game between these teams. So you would think that Stafford would have as much familiarity as anyone else to Seattle's coverage structure, what you're going to see pre-snap versus what you get post-snap, and where he can go or perhaps should go with the football. In this case, it's Adams against Job. Obviously, Rams fans or Sean McVay, Stafford, they like that matchup. Job's extremely underrated. I have a ton of coverage snaps of him saved up and edited in the Once Sports Analyser program. He's one of my favorite players. I think you guys probably know that. If you're watching the video, most likely you're a Seahawks fan, number one. Number two, you probably have awareness of the fact that I've done 2 or 3 videos on Job already. I'd like to do another one where I provide some commentary and my thoughts on his progression from early in his career to now getting paid and being retained in Seattle. The very next snap, of course, the 3rd and 10 after that incompletion, 11 personnel trips, and an opportunity to talk about the specific threat that trips or 3-by-1 formations show or display to a defense, and also how Seattle moves around Nick Emmanwori so much. In this case, he's the dime linebacker set up into the boundary. Now, this is cover 2 to the field, if you ask me, a zone coverage, and then down into the boundary, you're getting man. With Job on Adams, the number 1 receiver to the bottom, his route illustrated by that yellow line, and then Emmanwori oftentimes is going to be man on the running back as the dime linebacker, but what he does a great job of oftentimes is not pressing downhill too quickly. And so oftentimes if you get the running back either, expanding horizontally, or in this case, chipping the D end and then expanding, you'll get these guys, linebackers, safeties, roll down, whatever, who kind of press too much. And what happens is, or what can happen is, they'll open up the window for the number 1 receiver to sneak in behind. One of the perceived weaknesses, I guess you could say, of playing so much man into the boundary. In any case, the advantage here, I think, for Seattle is what they can do with the boundary side safety. He can really look to cut 3 from the other side. So in this case, what I'm talking about is the number 1 receiver is Puka Nacua, the number 2 receiver is the tight end, and the number 3 is set up closest to the left tackle. And he's a speed, meaning you have an athlete who could threaten vertically as a number 3 receiver, as opposed to if you switched these 2 guys and the tight end was 3, you don't have as much of a threat for that receiver to threaten the other side of the field, the safety on the other side of the field. And so what it does oftentimes, if you ask me, by being able to play man, and of course Job isn't connected to Adams at all in this particular example, is it allows the boundary side safety to almost ignore this receiver and focus to the trip side, the opposite side of the field. All of those things, if you ask me, mean nothing really as far as this play, but it was the outcome of this play, I should say. But it was a great great angle view, if you hear, to talk about the formation, trips, and how it differs schematically whenever you have a receiver as the number 3, closest to the left tackle in this case, versus a tight end. Stafford might think that Nacua is going to sit this down. Nacua thinks that Stafford's going to throw the ball, more in here, and he's going to run onto that open space. It is a nice job, if you ask me, of Witherspoon, who's on as the slot corner, and Woolen, who's up top, partially obscured by the frame for you guys, passing off these routes. So we're talking about number 1, Nacua going in, and number 2 kind of running this corner route. Woolen will fall off and take that route apart, or take it over, I should say. And then Witherspoon, look, if the ball is put perfectly in play on top of Nacua for him to run onto, it's going to be a difficult tackle for Witherspoon, obviously. But it's a switch release, if you ask me, that really looks like a cover 2 post-snap. But because of the routes, Woolen gets depth and matches this, if you will. Witherspoon matching it to the field. Totally different coverage than what you've got at the bottom side of the screen. Just trying to illustrate to you the complexity that there is, even trying to break it down now, months later, but certainly for a quarterback, even someone as experienced and smart as Matt Stafford, to try to diagnose and attack immediately post-snap. Originally, when I got the idea for this video from one of my patrons, I thought about collecting or organizing the plays, I should say, by coverage group, and then I decided to do it in a progression, and that gives us a neat opportunity here to talk about the Rams and McVay adjusting to what Seattle's doing. Again, this is in the NFC title game. We've got a 2nd and 7. Recall the first play I showed you was also a 2nd and 7, I think, from the first possession. The second play was a 2nd and 10, and then the one that I just finished was a 3rd and 10. We're now into, I believe, the third possession here. It's a 2nd and 7, 12 personnel by the Rams. It's a draw play. Really cool design, if you ask me, against a too-high safety structure for Seattle. Emmanwori is down here set up as the nickel over top of Nacua, so we would assume that we're not getting man here, because if we did, it'd be similar to the first play I showed you. We would expect these two guys to be switched, right? Emmanwori over top of and potentially guarding the tight end, Woolen, or Josh Jobe over top of Nacua as the second receiver. It's a draw play. Why does this work, or why did the Rams think that it worked? And it does. It goes for a big gain. Seattle hasn't been in attack mode at all on these second downs versus trips. And so they've set this up really well, they being the Rams. The tight end to the right, we're talking about this guy here, the slot tight end, going to release up to the inside linebacker. In a mirrored fashion, or the same look, the left tackle is going to release up to Drake Thomas. So both of the inside linebackers are getting blocked, in this case by a tight end for Ernest Jones, and then the left tackle for Drake Thomas. There you have it there. The tight end is getting up to Jones, who's off screen for us. But you got a really neat look at how the Rams have got this blocked with the 5 attackers or 5 blockers. Williams getting the football is going to get downhill. The blocking scheme's kind of fun, and it really numerically works for the Rams because Seattle's in a too-high structure. So you're subtracting those guys, and the scheme, the blocking scheme of it, opens things up. Leonard Williams trying to spin back. Mismatch, really, I thought, all season long between Leonard Williams and the guards for the Rams, whether it was the left guard or the right guard. In this case, he gets a hand on the running back, unable to pull him down. It is Emmanwori, and I think Julian Love on the tackle. Into the second quarter here, another trips formation, ball now on the right hash, so that the 3 receivers are set here to the bottom side. I actually think I have this mislabeled. Put it down as 12 personnel. Seems pretty clear to me that you've got 3 tight ends here, so this should be labeled 13. In any case, it reminded me of the first meeting between these two teams, where in the second half, I thought Mike McDonald and Aiden Durday possibly got pissed off and just decided to play a ton of man free. So on a 2nd and 6 here in the second quarter, we've got a one-high presentation, a pseudo one-high presentation. Here's the other safety, Julian Love, and they're going to show man with these matchups and play man. All right, Nick Emmanwori and Love are matched up over the number 2 and number 3 tight ends, and up to the top side, I think you have Witherspoon against Devontae Adams. We're into the second quarter, like I said. The knowledge or the identification, the quickness of identification for Stafford, I think really comes into play here. Once the ball is snapped, you can see he'll look to the bottom side of our screen, to the left, and I think he's just IDing Julian Love. Julian Love stays in man on this number 3, who he was set up on. And so I think Stafford is aware or understands this safety isn't going to sit down or poach anything from one on the opposite side, the top side of our screen, Adams, who's partially obscured, but now coming into your screen completely. And it's a really quick throw from Stafford that leads Adams for a big gain versus Witherspoon. Like I said, I had this mislabeled as 12 personnel. It's actually 13. Still a nickel response from Seattle. 5-man rush scheme. You can see the inside linebacker got there late. Whether Stafford knew that or not, I'm unsure of. But what I think he did know is that it was man. So this inside linebacker, Thomas, was clearing out this window, what would oftentimes be described as the hook or hook curl area. And Stafford knows that it's available to access for Adams on that little in cut. Big gain. Like I said, I think it was the second time in this little sequence that I've shown you where Witherspoon ended up falling down. I got a lot of trips in this game, the NFC Championship game. Did some of the coverage schematics or responses by Seattle change from Week 16? Yeah, in fact, I think they did. They showed a lot of man here, especially early on against trips. And even when we did see zone reactions to 3-by-1 or trips, it was oftentimes man into the boundary. 2nd and 10, this is on the same drive. And Nacua and Adams are set up inside. So we're talking about these two receivers here. 12 personnel with the tight end split wide left. and one of the other on the other tight end, split wide to the right. So Nakua's route is going to be a quick in cut, and with Adams built in behind it, I think McVay and Stafford had a pretty good idea of what they were going to get man. In this case, they end up almost kind of doubling Nakua with a safety and Ernest Jones. My perception of this is that we've got hard-coded man coverages here in those three situations, and then Thomas here. Obviously, they're not setting up Ernest Jones to play man on Nakua. So when I call this a double, I'm kind of getting away with one there in terms of terminology. But what I think you've got is just Jones matching the in cut, the quick in cut by Adams, and they're really trying to clear out this route, this area of the field for Davante Adams, in my opinion. You do have the tight end on the backside as another option. Really, to me, Stafford is told, look for Nakua on the quick in cut, but really we're probably going to get some clearing out of the middle of the field for Davante Adams. Now, maybe Stafford didn't expect this type of matching with Nakua's route, perhaps an overreaction. Some would say it's a great job by Nick Emmanwori to get his hands on the football. He's real physical in this route, obviously, with Adams. I think he's trying to grab here, or maybe is successfully grabbing the jersey a little bit, and then gets his hands in there for what I believe goes down as a pass defense. The versatility, right, the talent of Emmanwori obviously is a huge part of all the obfuscation and the disguise. There's another element here that I'll get to, that I'll try to touch on a little bit later. Actually, I should say there's two more elements. One is that it's not just man or zone or split field coverages. There's the small little variations like this one, where Ernest Jones is, I believe he's the low hole dropper in a man for your cover one delineation. He's just taking the first in cut with Kobe Bryant dropping down as the primary man defender. Nakua just, isn't targeted because Jones takes his route over. But a bigger facet for me that I'm really interested in and not really able to identify when, I think it'd be impossible to identify when and where it occurs, is what I think are hard-coded coverage calls by McDonald and Durde, meaning here's the coverage call / blitz. Now you guys run it, adapt it to 2x2 formations, 3x1, which is what we're focusing on, or even 2x1, versus coverage calls that are checks. So here's our call with some tag at the end of it. Mine was always check for the players, the athletes on the field to know, okay, you can check into something that you see if need be based on our automatics, our prep, our game prep, and our scouting, or run it, which means you're going to run whatever I call. I think there's essentially two systems of play calling happening with Seattle's defense. Some of them are hard-coded in a specific play or snap, and some of them are players adjusting on the field based on game prep, personnel, and formation presented. The very next snap, after that incompletion with Emmanwori guarding Davante Adams, 3rd and 10 here. Like I said, we're into the second quarter of the NFC Championship game. Emmanwori is set up as the dime linebacker. So Drake Thomas is off the field. Oftentimes is a key or a code, I should say, that you're going to get man into the boundary, and that's, absolutely what do we get up here with Job. It's just a matter of, do you as a quarterback want to take that matchup 8-10 times a game and give your ex-receiver, in this case Adams, a ton of opportunities to make plays? I don't have Nakua's route drawn up. You'll see it in a minute. Conceptually, I think it's very similar to what we just saw, except they've switched roles. Recall on the previous snap that I showed you, Nakua quickly went under and was taken over by Ernest Jones, and then Adams ran, a little bit later, deeper in cut, and that was the intended target on the play. Somewhat similar dynamic here, except you're getting a clear out route by the only tight end on the field. That's the red route that's drawn just outside of the left hash. I like the discipline of Emmanwori when he's tasked to play man here. I think that what we've got is zone reactions here by all these guys. Man to the boundary. In the case of Job, that's obvious. It's a man turn. You can watch him turn and run with Adams' release. A man turn means your back, your butt are to the quarterback, your chest, your eyes, your face mask are to the sideline. I think Emmanwori is similarly man on the running back, but he's staying high, meaning he's not pressing down. Probably he's not pressing towards the running back, towards the line of scrimmage too much. He's being patient, if you ask me. There's what I'm talking about As far as the zone reaction with the two high safeties, Williams and Lawrence have already kind of disrupted the pocket, and Stafford is off of his read. How do I? Why do I think it's so important? Even when they do play zone, for you to get a man technique into the boundary. I talked about it a little bit on the second play here. Perhaps you'll recall that by playing man here and being able to handle or giving Job that vertical responsibility one-on-one with no help out there, obviously near the sideline, it allows that safety to help out with any route emanating from the trip. So it doesn't necessarily matter here. Stafford is being disrupted by Williams getting upfield and then Lawrence, jumping underneath that patented kind of stunt that they use. But what really I think should be noted is that if that wasn't happening, this pressure here, Stafford might try to stick this throw under here if the safety was tasked with helping out here at all. He's not. The safety can literally turn his back, poach to the other side. It's commonly used by a lot of teams against trips, don't get me wrong, but I'm talking about trying to compare really this flat back and flat pedal reaction that you got from Bryant down there versus this kind of 45-degree or angled turn of the back, really ignoring totally the matchup of Job and Adams. Maybe I'm belaboring the point too much there for you. I guess what I'm saying is in their trips coverages, the Seahawks feel extremely comfortable, like a lot of teams, playing zone to one side of the field, man to the other, and basically asking you, the quarterback, the question, do you want to throw to the X receiver and the running back into the boundary 8, 10, 12, 14 times and really eliminate all these reads that you've focused on during the week and that your offensive coordinator, or in the case of Sean McVay, just got done explaining to you in the headset 25, 30 seconds ago? Do you want to ignore all that and just focus on all this up here? Mike Macdonald, Aiden Durday, and a lot of these systems that come from a Ravens background, if you will, force you to make that decision 18, 20 times, if the defense can stop the run in this, as they did in this case. When I say in this case, I mean, prior to some of the second down plays that I'm showing you. We're going to backtrack a little bit here. Same matchup against the Rams. Were they a little bit more zone-oriented against trips? Yes, at times. However, some of that is dictated by the situation and the personnel group that's on the field for the offense. So here you do have actually 13 personnel, kind of what I talked about earlier on an earlier play. 3 tight ends set up to the right. Nakua, the lone wide receiver here to the bottom side. What I like about, one of the many things I like about Seattle's defense is that from this too high alignment, whether it's 12 personnel, 13, 11, whatever, they can just put the front 4 in attack mode. If they're committed to rushing 4 so often, those guys have their own call. And I think this is related to the systems I was talking about earlier with Seattle. Are these hard-coded coverage calls, or are they things that can be changed from cover 2 to cover 3, or cover 3 to split field or man on the field? I think the same thing exists with these guys up front. Essentially, I think a lot of these blitzes are predetermined calls by McDonald and or Durday. Whoever's making a call to Ernest Jones in the huddle, we know it's McDonald, or in the headset, excuse me. We do have on this particular play, Reed is getting instant pressure. It's zone. Normally, when you get zone and then man to one side, you're going to get the zone part to the field. I feel like I've covered that in great detail here so far. And then man into the boundary. We're getting the exact opposite here. Witherspoon is starting to turn and look for this type of route. And in fact, he runs the route for the tight end on the outside here. Job sits down. It's a cover 2 to the boundary. I think it's a really great example of drops by Job, pass drops by Job, Thomas, I think that's Ernest Jones, the boundary side safety, which I think is Julian Love, typically set to the right, but oftentimes into the boundary. Stafford ends up scrambling, 6-7 yard gain, something like that. Whether it's successful or not isn't really my concern. What I'm trying to illustrate here is the multiple things, but the dichotomy between, or the question I guess I'm posing is, how many of these do you think are hard-coded play calls by McDonald? And then how many of these are adaptations or coverage changes that are made on the field by the players, depending on the formation that is shown? I don't know. I don't know. The only way that we would know is to ask them, and they may not be willing to give that away. I think it's another layer to, you've got all of the versatility, different coverages played, the disguise with different alignments and rules for the players. Along with all of those things, I think you've got a truly intelligent group of players on defense, possibly related to the teaching that they get from their coaches, but more so, really, we should give credit to those players for accepting the coaching, accepting the teaching, and going out there on the field. I think this is probably the most intelligent group of defensive players that I saw on the field in 2025. All right, the very next play here is a 3rd and 4, and once again, the Rams are in a trip set. Really, it's bunch, but it's 11 personnel. So there's one tight end on the field. Normally, when you're getting bunched to one side, it's to the field, and the running back is set up into the boundary. If it was going to be a 2-by-2 formation, simplistically, most of the time, teams are just having the tight end set up into the boundary. Guys like Sean McVay will really feature a receiver into the boundary. Puka Nacua is generally the case to create a 2-by-2 and just give him a matchup advantage against a will linebacker. But in any case, no one's going to win up front here for Seattle, okay? They are in a mug look. It's dime. Emmanwori is the dime linebacker, so Drake Thomas is not on the field. It's a too-high safety look. It's a great job, I think, by Woolen and Witherspoon to the bottom. We've really got a flipping of what the dynamic that I kind of went to with the last play, and that's that we're getting zone reaction to the field down here by Woolen and Witherspoon, too-high safety look, and now we're playing man up to the top. It doesn't really matter as far as Stafford is concerned. He's looking to the bottom side. No surprise, that's where Nacua is. You don't have Devontae Adams on the field. It's a different X receiver, so Job is just playing him straight man. Once again, you got safety, with his back turned to the X receiver, to the boundary side corner. A great reaction from Woolen, and then Witherspoon is going to finish him off, and they get a stop here. Something to talk about or focus on is, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier, or talked about it a little bit, is the reaction of Emmanwori, and I'm being so nuanced when he's in man to the boundary. So what I'm talking about here is the route that is run by the boundary side X and how Job is covering it. Obviously, I think you've got man here as far as him tracking it. Not that he's connected to the route in any great fashion, but look at the running back and the width he has versus Emmanwori. Emmanwori is very patient and confident, I guess I should say, in his ability to close down on these routes into the boundary. He's also really good when it's man on being able to briefly check his responsibility after looking at the quarterback. Essentially, what I'm offering to you is, even though it's man, Emmanwori has his eyes on the quarterback for a moment to see if he's looking at the guy that Emmanwori is responsible for. That's what I'm trying to sell you, is that you have some nuance, some layers, or multiple layers in how these guys are taught their reactions. Do I think their reads and then their reactions, do I think other teams do the stuff? Sure, of course. I just think Seattle is taught better, and I think their players apply it with a higher degree of consistency or maybe efficiency out on the field. Let's take stock for a moment of what we've seen a lot of in the two matchups against the Rams, because we're going to move on to, I think, 4 plays from the Super Bowl. A lot of man-free, cover 1. Some combo coverages where you got zone to the field and man into the boundary, which I think is what you saw here on the last play. All right, we'll move on here to the Super Bowl. Really, I think, interesting way that the Patriots get into this 3-by-1 formation. They started in empty. The running back was set up down into the boundary. In fact, I think this is the initial 3rd down of the game. That's a fun defense for me to try to study. I always feel like I'm playing catch-up. Here, New England is trying to force their hand, in my opinion, by lining up in empty, forcing the boundary side safety to walk down. Initially, he was lined up over the tight end. Job was lined up over the running back. So, whether they're going to play man or zone out of that, who knows? It would lend itself to be in zone from a one-high safety look. In any case, they've moved back into trips. So you've got 3 receivers to the field, running back set up into the boundary. Really, it's to the bottom side of our screen. It's not really the boundary. The ball is almost in the middle of the field. In any case, it's a great chance for Love to make a tackle on this snag flat concept. It's cover 3, if you ask me, but into the boundary, or with the boundary side corner, Job is going to react to the snag route by the tight end immediately. The line to gain is the is the negative 38 right here for New England. Drake May is reading that Love has not expanded too much, meaning Love didn't expand and run like it's man, which is why I'm telling you that I think it's cover 3. And he hits the running back. I think it's Henderson. Love, unfortunately, misses the tackle. Henderson's going to get 7 or 8 yards. It's a cool concept. Snag flat, curl flat, whatever you want to call it, slant flat, different variations of the same concept. Someone threatening this area, the curl, someone threatening the flats immediately. And if the flat player doesn't expand quick enough, get the ball out there, let him try to pick up the first down. Like I said, it's a 3rd and 2 early in the game. Rare for Love to miss tackles like that. He just can't get the guy down. But I like what New England's trying to do, force them into a one high safety look from a simple concept, right? Empty, snag, flat, nothing fancy or really constructed other than the initial formation and then the shift / motion of the running back into the backfield. This one's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. Again, you've got this kind of switch or inversion, if you will, of the boundary versus field side coverage. So still on the first drive, I think, for New England. It's a 1st and 10. Derek Hall's going to get a sack off the left side. The left side of the Patriots offensive line, I should say. And the way that this is going to work out, Emmanwori set up as the nickel. It's a 2 high safety look. Here's the route. So this is obviously where May is being told to read, where he's being, instructed to look in the headset to this concept here. Normally, you're going to get man into the boundary and everybody else is going to play zone to the field if and when Seattle chooses to make that call. Here, there's this switch of that dynamic. I think Job has obviously played zone up top. And watch the boundary side safety. Remember, the boundary side safety is a guy that I've talked to you a couple of times about. When they are playing man over there, that boundary side safety will just flat foot read it and immediately look to the trip side. That's not what happens here from Julian Love. He actually gets some width and starts to backpedal, so he's playing cover 2. Versus down here at the bottom side of the screen, Witherspoon on number 1 is playing man. Now, if it weren't for the pressure of Derek Hall, I think this is where Drake May is going to go with the football. Try to throw it over top the second level of the defense. But a more interesting part of this to me, I mentioned nuance earlier. There's some times where it could be a mistake, is the fact that, May, they've got number 2 on kind of this out and up route, wheel-ish look, if you ask me. Number 3 on this kind of out cut. And because of the way that Emmanwori plays this, Emmanwori is sitting outside leverage of that out route by the tight end. I'm talking about this tight end here running an out route. The number 2 receiver here, I think it's Douglas, running wheel out and up-ish type look. And if it weren't for the pressure from Hall, then obviously with Witherspoon in man here, there's an opportunity for Drake May to throw this football down the sideline here. And in fact, I think he actually did try one of those throws later on. If memory serves, New England came back to that concept and got the same look. Basically, it's man to the trip side on 1, zone to the backside, the boundary, where I've been telling you that Seattle plays so much man. So really, they've just flipped the man or the combo coverage, the man side, if you ask me. Now, May is already back up to the top as far as where he's reading. It doesn't matter. Derek Hall, is all over Drake May. He's going to get the sack. It's a really interesting play. Pressure plays a role, right? If there is a coverage mistake here, if this is a mistake by not expanding with the width of 2, I'm talking about Emmanwori, it didn't end up hurting them. And that's one of the interesting things about the D-line, the front 4, being in attack mode so much. Yes, they're only rushing 4, but it's a variable 4. Oftentimes, one of the 4 D linemen is will drop out, and then the other a 4th rusher will emanate from somewhere else, whether it's a nickel or an inside linebacker. My point is, by allowing such defined roles, such clearly defined roles, you 4 are going to attack. I feel like the Seahawks gain, a 1/10 of a second, or maybe 8/100ths of a second, if you will, as far as the pass rushers being able to get there a little bit sooner and not allow quarterbacks to take advantage of any openings that exist in the defense, with routes like this one. Let's do two more, and this is really the reason why I decided to not present all these trips coverages collectively in terms of all the cover one man free versions, all the cover two combo versions, because I wanted to save these two for last. It's really my favorite pair of Mike McDonald coverages, and in this case they happen consecutively as far as the video presentation here. They both occur in the first quarter of the Super Bowl. This is one of my favorite ones at any level of football. I call it the glitch blitz. It's a 3rd and 8. One of the Witherspoon blitzes is going to result in a quarterback hit, sack, whatever. Basically, you're forcing the quarterback to throw the ball in a certain area. It's a mug presentation as far as having 6 defenders lined up as potential blitzers. Oftentimes, it'll be done with a 7th added up there as well. Kurt Warner calls this blitz 0. In any case, it's 2 athletes blitzing off the edge. Witherspoon from the bottom side here, and then Emmanwori from the top side. And they're just trading those two with 2 defensive tackles dropping out. I've covered this one a lot on my channel when McDonald was in Baltimore. And in fact, you guys may recall from 2024, Leonard Williams had a pick 6 against the Jets on this same concept. So here's Leonard Williams, here's Byron Murphy. They're dropping out, right? They're trying to close off the middle of the field. But what I really like about this one is there's zone drops from a defensive lineman. This is man. You got man here, man there, man up top with Job. There's a lot of graphics on the screen. Sorry if it's too much. But you're going to have man from the backside safety on the tight end there. So really, it's cover 0, but you're dropping out 2 defensive tackles in the middle of the field. So some of these hot routes or adaptation routes will not be available because the quarterback will look and he'll see someone in the window. That's not how it works out here. All these routes from New England are, really going pretty far down the field, except for the bottom side route. Woolen against, I think it's Stephon Diggs at the bottom. No throw is attempted to a receiver. May is just trying to get this ball away. Incompletion, maybe keep them in a good situation as far as a punt. The glitch blitz, you're occupying the tackles, occupying the offensive tackles, the left tackle and the right tackle, both occupied by pass rushers. The interior 2 guys are dropping out. Someone is occupying the center. Just math. If you don't leave the tight end into block, we're talking about this tight end here. If he doesn't stay into block, you're not going to be able to handle both of these edge rushers, both of the guys blitzing off the edge. In the case of Witherspoon, the nickel, and Emmanwori, the dime, it's just math. I've done a lot of videos on it. You're more than welcome to go to my channel and search it up. Maybe I'll link one up in the description. Maybe the first time that the Patriots saw it in that game. It's a violent finish. Brian Flores, one of the guys who really popularized the usage of this type of stuff. The only difference was, thinking back to years ago, 2021, a Thursday night game where the Ravens traveled down to Florida. Flores and the Dolphins used it like 35, 37, maybe 39 times in that game. The difference was they were reading it. Their interior defensive linemen were reading whether they should drop out or not. This is hard-coded for Williams and Murphy to drop out and for these guys to blitz off the edge. That's why I call this the glitch blitz and not blitz 0, which is one of the terms that many guys have used to talk about these types of pass rush opportunities where you're playing really man on the outside, but you got zone droppers underneath in the form of 2 defensive tackles. The element that I want to mention again, for the third time is how much of this is called hard-coded, meaning run it, and how much of it is adaptations to the formation, 2x2, 3x1, etc. I think the glitch blitz is called by McDonald, and I've thought that dating back to 2022, because it usually only shows up on 4th and 6, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 6. We don't ever see it on 1st and 10. Of course, 1st and 10 could obviously be a run play. In any case, this is a 2nd and 13. It's after a tackle for loss by Ernest Jones on a 1st and 10 run concept. Actually, Drake Thomas disrupted it, and then Jones finished the running back off. Everything seems so smooth at times. I think there's different modes for this defense, and I've talked about it 3 times now. I think that you've got modes where McDonald calls something and you run it, and this is another one in my opinion. 2 deep, 4 under. So it'll be diagrammed on screen for you guys in a moment. But here's the route concepts that you get. Running back into the flats, the yellow line here, into the boundary, the bottom side of our screen. X receiver, essentially just trying to clear out the boundary side corner. Well, why? Because the boundary side corner in Mike Macdonald's structure plays so much man. You guessed it. Well, here he's playing cover 2 corner. He's just aggressively stepping to the X receiver. I think it's Booty, and jamming him up, impeding his release. The 5th blitzer, the 5th rusher, is Julian Love. And credit to Drake May, he's recognized it, that Love was walked down. So what you're getting here is a 2-deep look with Witherspoon and Bryant. The other safety is rushing through the B gap. And so Drake May correctly identifies, okay, I got to get this ball out quick. There's a 5th rusher here. The problem is it's not man by Job to the boundary. It's cover 2 zone. You get a 2nd tackle for loss in a row. Not 2nd in a row by Job. Like I said, Drake Thomas and Ernest Jones had combined for the previous one, a run play on 1st and 10. Another layer, if you ask me, to what Seattle does is that they can fool these high-level quarterbacks, these guys. Drake May had an unbelievable season in 2025, borderline, MVP stuff. The only problem I would say with defending the read here as far as Drake May goes is that you've got DeMarcus Lawrence up top, lined up to trips. It's obviously not man. If you switched them, let's say DeMarcus Lawrence was over here and Julian Love was over there to the top side, well, then it looks like you could possibly have man, right? Witherspoon, theoretically Julian Love, an outside corner, Reek Woolen against 3 stand-ups makes it look more realistic that you could get man. It's not possible to play man here with DeMarcus Lawrence lined up to the top side of the screen. There's no athlete up there to match those guys, specifically when you have a receiver lined up where the Patriots do. The Patriots have a receiver at 3. I think it's Douglas, tight end at 2, and then outside receiver up top at number 1. Kind of similar to what I talked about earlier with the Rams, in that there's a difference in trips when you have a receiver at 3 speed, an athlete, someone who can threaten vertically, versus a tight end. In any case, it's a really great play coverage call, by Seattle. I think that the glitch blitz and 2 deep, 4 under are hard-coded. I suspect that those are calls that Seattle staff makes, and you guys on the field have to run it regardless of what shows up. The difference, or what makes it a little bit more risky, 2 deep, 4 under, is that you're rushing 5. Julian Love was the add-on rusher there. I usually try to save my comments until the end. Any conjecture or thoughts that I have, I like to show the film first and then give you my thoughts that are based on the film that I just showed you. So that's what I'll do here. I'll be up front. I cannot explain some of the patterns that show up as far as the coverages against trips. And I think it's, I'm not making excuses or trying to explain away my inability to understand it and relay it to you. I think there are, if you did a pivot table of 3-by-1 coverages, I think some differences would show up with how Macdonald and the Seahawks call the game against athletic or non-athletic quarterbacks. I think you would see some differences, what shows up and what does not. That's common sense, right? So I think you've got 2 different perspectives or 2 different operating systems at play there. Are we facing a guy who can scramble, Drake May, even a Trevor Lawrence, Jaden Daniels, etc., Josh Allen? Or are we facing someone who typically isn't going to give you much as far as escapability, like a Matt Stafford, but obviously has some other very distinct strengths? Mike Macdonald and Aiden Durday, I think, have some calls signaled through the headset that are hard-coded, and some that are adaptations or changed or multiple. Think like an offensive coordinator, right, with a quarterback. We're going to call these 2 plays in the huddle, and depending on how the defense lines up, we may run it. Sam Darnold, obviously does that a ton, or we may check to our second call. I think Seattle's got the same system. The difference is you don't see it as much. You don't see very distinctly, obviously, a quarterback of the defense, whether it's Ernest Jones, Julian Love, whatever, DeMarcus Lawrence, telling everyone else to change the call. And I think that's part of the design. I think you've got another attempt at obfuscation in Seattle, and that is not communicating that we're running the second coverage that was called, or not communicating that we're running the automatic or the check, if you will, based upon the formation. I think McDonald and Durday kind of ask their players to juggle while riding a bike, and do so without crashing or running into any other humans. There is this thought, there has been this thought since the Super Bowl win out there, that teams are going to operate and try to copy, right? Basically, what Seattle did. I don't know if you can. You've got hard-coded play calls on certain downs, my perception, and then, that would be based on what McDonald or Durday think the offense is getting ready to do. Here's a hard-coded coverage call / blitz front that's going to stop the play we think is coming. Maybe there's a 72% chance this play's coming based upon personnel, down and distance, and where the ball is located on the field, right hash versus left hash, etc. As opposed to an automatic front check, or a check pending a personnel group in formation. There's a ton of teams that do this on defense. I'm familiar with the workflow at a lower level. So what we did, prepare our players for the formation and the situation and where an offensive player, a talented offensive player lines up, and then have a check in place to stop those play concepts. To me, what makes the Seahawks structure so tough to pin down for regular people like us, even months after the season is over, I think Mike McDonald would like to play more man. I do. I think he'd like to play, versus trips. Let's do it this way. I think he'd like to bring a fifth rusher versus trips and play more man, but against certain quarterbacks, that's counterproductive, right? You got the guys who recognize things quickly and get the ball out fast. Stafford, Jared Goff, Pat Mahomes, right? Other more athletic quarterbacks with escapability, Seattle might want to get that fifth rusher and play zone behind it, the 2 deep 4 under that I showed you, where Love was the fifth rusher, right, against Drake May. May got the ball out fast as well to the running back, but Joe made the tackle. It's a quick gain, in fact, tackle for loss. The point here is there's obviously a system that evolves or adapts from week to week depending on the matchup. I think it goes more in-depth than that. I think there's 2 platforms being used to make the calls. Simplistically, think if there were 2 actual offensive play callers calling plays for an offense, let's say. I've actually encountered this once in the real world. In high school football, it wasn't necessarily successful, but let's say these 2 play callers had their own ideas about what would work. But they use the same, terminology, use the same play schemes, the same formations. You as a defender, a defense coordinator, or a fan, you wouldn't know, right, who's calling the 1st and 10 versus the next play, the 2nd and 7. It'd be another layer that makes the scouting, the prep kind of complicated, right? You know, if they were overt about it, the offense advertised, hey, we've got 2 different guys making play calls, and what we're trying to do is not let you, the defense, know who is actually making the call on 1st and 10 versus 2nd and 7 or 3rd and 2. I think here we've got like a elevated version of that in Seattle. Hard-coded coverages / blitzes that they use, and then checks that show up, but the caveat is you don't have guys gesticulating, making large-scale arm movements or turning their head and hollering from one side to the other. They're expected to know the call. That's my suspicion. How often that shows up? My guess is 10 to 12 times a game, maybe 15. That's my guess. And really what I'm talking about is depending on the personnel that's on the field, what the offense lines up in. And this is not a cop-out to explain, this is not an attempt at a cop-out to explain to you why I can't give you more pattern / rules for how the Seahawks play trips. Essentially, I think it depends on which platform, which operating system they're using. Mike McDonald and Aiden Durday's brains, what we think is coming, here's a hard-coded call, versus a check against a particular formation that you guys have been prepared for, and we expect you to switch into that coverage without showing everyone that we just switched into the coverage. Hopefully I explained all of that in a way that makes some kind of sense to you. You're more than welcome to take my idea and run with it, or maybe there's other content creators, reporters, etc., that have asked those types of questions. It's something that I perceive in the McDonald defense kind of hiding within plain sight at times, and it's unspoken, but maybe we'll get more guys that switch teams, like, for example, Bryant moving on to the Bills, who bring some of that system with them. If you guys enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comment section. I wanted to get about 30 plays in this one and make it, an hour and a half long production, but this one went on long enough, obviously. 13 plays talking about the Seahawks, trips coverages, how Nick Emmanwori, but other players as well, impact with their versatility, their understanding, and their extreme level of intelligence that I think has gone a little bit underreported or undercovered even after the Super Bowl win. In any case, if you guys enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section, number one. Number two, please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media if you think other Seahawks fans would enjoy this one as well. Appreciate you guys' time.